Welcome. Today is Thursday, May 27th. We're here with the A Course in Miracles Palm Beach Study Group. Let's have a moment of silence to begin. Today we are in the text on chapter 3, section 6, Judgment and the Authority Problem. In the text, it's on page 46. We have already discussed the last judgment, but in insufficient detail. After the last judgment, there will be no more. Judgment is symbolic because beyond perception, there is no judgment. When the Bible says, "Judge not that ye be not judged," it means that if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. The choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. Judgment is the process on which perception, but not knowledge, rests. I have discussed this before in terms of the selectivity of perception, pointing out that evaluation is its obvious prerequisite. Judgment always involves rejection. It never emphasizes only the positive aspects of what is judged, whether in you or in others. What has been perceived and rejected, or judged and found wanting, remains in your mind because it has been perceived. One of the illusions from which you suffer is the belief that what you judged against has no effect. This cannot be true unless you also believe that what you judged against does not exist. You evidently do not believe this, or you would have not judged against it. In the end, it does not matter whether your judgment is right or wrong. Either way, you are placing your belief in the unreal. This cannot be avoided in any type of judgment because it implies the belief that reality is yours to select from. Are there any questions, observations?
I am definitely just a little bit confused, John, about the concept. I believe it's in paragraph 2, line 7. One of the illusions from which you suffer is the belief that what you judged against has no effect. I guess I'm not sure I know what that means.
Well, let's look at it. The next sentence says, "This cannot be true unless you also believe that what you judged against does not exist." Let's see if we can think of an example. Can you give me an idea of something that you judge for or against?
Maybe an individual, maybe coming to a quick decision about someone's character, judging, you mean like judging something like that?
Okay, so we make a judgment that this particular person is a no good so-and-so. So we're judging against them. And so what we judged against has no effect. What we judged against does not exist. I guess what it's meaning is that, when we judge against something, we kind of like put it out of our mind. We say no to it. No. That's not good. That's not right. That's not whatever. We've judged it against some ideal. And so by doing that, we're kind of like dismissing it. And it's like, I think that's what we're saying, that it has no effect. It does not exist. I'm kind of reaching here because I'm not really too sure if I'm interpreting this correctly. I will go back to, however, when it's saying that the last judgment is not meaning, lots of people think of the last judgment that God is judging us and that's the last judgment. But God doesn't judge us. The last judgment is the last time that we make a judgment while in the ego world. That's our last judgment, the last time we judge. Yes? You turned your mic on?
Oh,
you didn't mean to. Okay. So, because then it says, after the last judgment, there will be no more. So, judge not that ye be not judged means if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. Now remember here, the word reality means, in the course definition, spiritual reality. The reality that we are whole and innocent children of God. So if we're judging the reality of others, then we're judging our own reality, because whatever we do unto our brother, we do unto ourselves. So if we do judge someone as a no good so-and-so, in effect, we're judging ourselves as a no good so-and-so because there's only one of us. Now that makes sense to me. So then again, the choice to judge rather than to know. Again, judgment is perception, is ego. Knowing is spirit. Spirit doesn't have to judge because spirit knows. And there's only one thing that spirit knows. Spirit knows that we're the perfect child of God, that we're whole and innocent, just the way God created us. So there's no reason to judge. There's no judgment involved. It's a knowing. It's a simple knowing. So judgment is the process on which perception, but not knowledge, rests. It's the process of ego, but not of spirit. So judgment always involves rejection, because if you're choosing one thing over the other, then you're choosing against something. So you're rejecting something. one one of the illusions from which you suffer is the belief that what you judged against has no effect. See, I chose the positive thing, so that negative thing isn't going to affect me. But you chose one over the other, so you're not seeing it as the whole, as the totality. So you think it has no effect, and that and that it doesn't exist because you chose against it. But you can't have light. You can't have one side of the coin without the other. You can't say, well, I'll take all the heads, but I'll leave the tails for you. You either have the whole coin or you don't. There's no such thing as just the head part of the coin or just the tail part of the coin, you know. And then it says, this is interesting, it says, you evidently do not believe this, or you would not have judged against it. Obviously, it exists if you judged against it. Hello? In the end, it does not matter whether your judgment is right or wrong. Again, because you either have the whole coin or you have no coin at all. I mean, you're either working on the spiritual level where there is no judgment, or you're working on the ego level. So it doesn't matter if your judgment's right or wrong. Somebody else can judge just the opposite and think that what you judged against is what they're judging for, and vice versa, because they're on the other side of the world, and so they're standing opposite of you. So they think right is left, and you think left is right, or whatever. You know, either way, you are placing your belief in the unreal. Either way, by judging, you are placing your belief in ego. This cannot be avoided in any type of judgment because it implies the belief that reality is yours to select from. And it's not, because reality, again, that means the spirit. And you can't choose from the spirit. The spirit just is. God just is. Are we good to go? All right, we're on paragraph 3. You have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. When you recognize what you are and what your brothers are, you will realize that judging them in any way is without meaning. In fact, their meaning is lost to you precisely because you are judging them. All uncertainty comes from the belief that you are under the coercion of judgment. You do not need judgment to organize your life, and you certainly do not need it to organize yourself. In the presence of knowledge, all judgment is automatically suspended, and this is the process that enables recognition to replace perception. Any comments?
I think I understand that. It's pretty clear. I guess I would just wonder, that it harkens back to something we discussed a little bit before about having to maintain some sense of discernment, if not judging, not necessarily a positive or a negative, but the thought that there may be circumstances that are not good for you. There may be people who don't have your best interests at in their mind or at heart. So although it might not be called judging, you certainly have to maintain some sense of discernment, right? As to, whether you'll spend time with people or whether you'll do what someone's asking you to do.
Yes,
If only we were all at the same level.
I mean, I'm going to agree with you, and my feeling is that, they're talking here about making value judgments in relationship to other people, discerning whether it's better if you buy this car or that car, discerning whether it's better if you live in this house or that house, or move to this state or that state, or any other myriad of decisions that we need to make as we walk through life concerning business and finances and what have you, what we eat and so forth and so on. I don't think that really falls into the category of what we're speaking about here. Everything we've read so far has related to judging your brother. So in other words, there's a homeless person walking through the parking lot at Publix. Lots of people will look at that person and make a judgment. Oh, they're so dirty. Oh, what? They must be lazy. They can't work. Why are they homeless? You're going through all of these things. Instead of looking at that person and saying, regardless of what you look like, regardless of what you smell like, you are a child of God. You are an innocent, pure child of God, just as I am. And I see me in you, and I see you in me, because there's only one of us. So I'm not going to judge you for being a homeless person. I'm not going to judge you for being smelly and dirty. I'm not going to judge you for being fat and overweight. I'm not going to judge you for being white or black or this or that or anything else. I'm going to accept you as my equal in God's eye. So I think that's the point that's being made here, is judgment towards other people, not discerning what car you should have or what job you should take or what have you. Go ahead.
I understand that, and I definitely get it. I work for the department that helps the homeless, so I know the stories. I am but one paycheck away from being in the same situation, right? Or one catastrophe or one disability. I understand all of that, but I guess I'm saying it's possible it may be necessary at times for us to judge another human being as not being someone who is on the same level that we may be in terms of evolution or understanding, and may have not our best interests at heart. So as much as I would like to think that they are just like me, a child of God, and we should all be forgiven, I will make myself distant from them because I am judging them as being hurtful to me or as being, detrimental to me. I think we mentioned that at one time, remember? And I think it may have even been off camera at the time. I think the discussion involved more the thought that you can accept them as a child of God, just as you are a child of God, but still determine that it may not be in your best interest to be with them or to spend time with them. I thought.
Yes, yes, I remember that conversation. So, you know, it's true. I mean, if you're in an abusive relationship with somebody um, who's caught by addiction or is a very angry person, or somebody who's, you know, abusing you, and yes, you should take yourself out of that situation. The the key here is not judging them as bad, recognizing that they have a problem, recognizing that it's not good for you to be in communion with them physically, but in your mind, that you still pray for them and understand that they are a child of God, but they're having a very hard time navigating through the ego world. And so you're going to see them as whole and loving and beautiful in your mind, and hold that ideal for them and understand that they are a spiritual being inside themselves, but they don't know that yet. There will come a time when they do, but right now they don't know that. Right now they're completely enveloped in the ego world, and they're being ruled by their addictions and by their anger and all of this. But no, you don't have to associate with that, and you don't have to buy into that, and you don't have to fix them, because you can't anyway. They have to fix themselves. So, you know, there are these situations where it's a fine line to walk between understanding what's the best thing for my physical self and my emotional self, and yet how I'm going to think and feel about that person. Because if I get angry at them, then I'm being ego. It's you know, there's somewhere here in the course, it may even be in this chapter, I don't know if we keep reading, where it says that the best thing to do is to remain neutral. And the example is Jesus. Jesus walked through the streets and he said, hey, he says, let ye who is without sin cast the first stone. He talked to the woman at the well, even though she was a Samaritan or whatever. He's hanging on the cross and supposedly saying, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. These kinds of things. He accepted everybody. He took everybody in. He, rich or poor, whatever. And he remained neutral in terms of he didn't judge them as human beings on the one hand. On the other hand, well, I mean, I don't know. I don't recall it says anything about him taking himself out of a situation. He pretty much put himself into situations from what we know. But it's It has all to do with your attitude. Let's go to chapter 4. You are very fearful of everything you have perceived, but have refused to accept. You believe that because you have refused to accept it, you have lost control over it. This is why you see it in nightmares or in pleasant disguises in what seem to be your happier dreams. Nothing that you have refused to accept can be brought into awareness. It is not dangerous in itself, but you have made it seem dangerous to you. This is one of those paragraphs which, remember, the whole course he was speaking to Helen Schuckman, who was taking this down. And the reason it's left in the course is because it does pertain to all of us, just as it pertained to her, but it may seem, the language may seem very personal in the way it's done. Because the you here that he's referring to, at least when it was first spoken, was Helen. And Helen did have this problem. If you read the biography that Kenneth Wapnick wrote of her, which I did, it's very revealing. But let's look at it as though he's speaking to you and me. You are very fearful of everything you have perceived, but have refused to accept. So again, that implied that there was a judgment made. We refuse to accept it, and then it becomes fearful. You believe that because you have refused to accept it, you've lost control over it. I can't think of a good example right now to fit this into. That is why you see it in nightmares or in pleasant disguises and what seem to be your happier dreams. Nothing that you have refused to accept can be brought into awareness. It is not dangerous in itself, but you have made it seem dangerous to you. Do you think you might have an example of something that fits this?
Unless it's referring to no.
Well, what's something we have nightmares about? Well, dying. Let's use that, okay? You refuse to accept that you're going to die, for example. You know, people are always afraid of dying. They think that's the end of them. They have no concept of that they're immortal beings, that death is just an illusion. So you refuse to accept that. And so you've lost control over it. Now you're always afraid of dying. You don't want to, oh no, I won't go on the plane because it might crash and I might die. Oh no, I won't do this or do that because something might happen and I might die. You know, it's completely, you completely lose control over that if you're really gripped by that fear. And that's why you see it in nightmares. And so nothing that you have refused to accept can be brought into awareness. Well, how can you deal with it if you're not bringing it into awareness? So many people refuse to even think about it. You know, they might have nightmares about it, but consciously they don't want to think about that they're going to die, and it's not dangerous in itself, because death isn't even dangerous in itself, but you've made it seem dangerous to you. Or like the fear of heights. Going up in the elevator or standing on the roof is not dangerous in itself, but it sure seems dangerous to you if you've, judged that that's a fearful situation and might lead to your death. I hope I'm hitting it here. This chapter is presenting quite a challenge, I'll tell you. Let's go to paragraph 5. When you feel tired, it is because you have judged yourself as capable of being tired. When you laugh at something, it is because you have judged, it's someone. When you laugh at someone, it is because you have judged him as unworthy. When you laugh at yourself, you must laugh at others, if only because you cannot tolerate the idea of being more unworthy than they are. All this makes you feel tired because it is essentially disheartening. You are not really capable of being tired, but you are very capable of wearying yourself. The strain of constant judgment is virtually intolerable. It is curious that an ability so debilitating would be so deeply cherished. Yet if you wish to be the author of reality, you must insist, you will insist on holding on to judgment. Yet if you wish to be the author of reality, you will insist on holding on to judgment. You will also regard judgment with fear, believing that it will someday be used against you. This belief can exist only to the extent that you believe in the efficiency of judgment as a weapon or defense for your own authority. Well, so laughing at somebody, making fun of somebody implies the judgment that you is unworthy. And when you laugh at yourself, you must laugh at others because you can't tolerate the idea of being more unworthy than they are, which is another value judgment. And this tires you out. Being somebody who's constantly judging others and being judgmental in their mind, and there's another word for this, it's called being critical. People who are so critical, who find fault with everything and everybody, nobody can ever do anything good enough. Everybody's wrong but them. They're always critical of everybody. They're always judging everybody. That's very, very tiring. And debilitating. And you will also regard judgment with fear, believing that it will someday be used against you. how many people they just, oh my God, they have to have everything perfect, their clothes, their hair and makeup, their furnishings, their watch, their car, their whatever, because they are so afraid of somebody judging them as being imperfect. It's judgment being used as a weapon. You can use it against others, you can use it against yourself. And then there's people who are very critical of themselves. They're never good enough. They're not smart enough. They're not rich enough. They're not this enough. They're not that enough. They're constantly being critical and self-judging. And that's no way to live. And it's certainly not part of a spiritual life. Then it goes on and says, God offers only mercy. Your words should reflect only mercy, because that is what you have received, and that is what you should give. Justice is a temporary expedient, or an attempt to teach you the meaning of mercy. It is judgmental only because you are capable of injustice. God only offers mercy. Your words should reflect only mercy, because that is what you have received, and that is what you should give. Let's write that up in 10-foot letters and paste it on billboards across the world. I have spoken of different symptoms, and at that level, there is almost endless variation. There is, however, only one cause for all of them: the authority problem. This is the root of all evil, quote. Every symptom the ego makes involves a contradiction in terms, because the mind is split between the ego and the Holy Spirit, so that whatever the ego makes is incomplete and contradictory. This untenable position is the result of the authority problem, which, because it accepts the one inconceivable thought as its premise, can produce only ideas that are inconceivable. Paragraph 8. The issue of authority is really a question of authorship. When you have an authority problem, it is always because you believe you are the author of yourself and project your delusion onto others. You then perceive the situation as one in which others are literally fighting you for your authorship. This is the fundamental error of all those who believe they have usurped the power of God. This belief is very frightening to them, but hardly troubles God. He is, however, eager to undo it, not to punish his children, but only because he knows that it makes them unhappy. God's creations are given their true authorship, but you prefer to be anonymous when you choose to separate yourself from your author. Being uncertain of your true authorship, you believe that your creation was anonymous. This leaves you in a position where it sounds meaningful to believe that you have created yourself. The dispute over authorship has left such uncertainty in your mind that it may even doubt whether you really exist at all. So there we are. When we thought that we could be separated from our Father and cause the split mind to happen, cause the ego to happen, cause the universe to be created that we live in, the physical reality, it was all comes down to this authorship and authority. And the position we're in is the result of the authority problem. We need to refocus and give God back his authority and authorship of us. We need to heal our split mind and transcend the ego thinking. Realize that there is no separation between us and the Father, never has been, never will be. And accept that as our true authorship, and that God is the true authority. And that will eliminate all judgment, because then there will be nothing to judge. What did it say at the beginning? After the last judgment, there will be no more. Any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question about the way you phrased that we need to give God the authorship back. I guess I wonder whether he always has it and always will. We just need to recognize that.
Yeah, that's what I meant. You know, we have to give it back in our own minds. Yeah. Paragraph 9. Only those who give over all desire to reject can know that their own rejection is impossible. You have not usurped the power of God, but you have lost it. Fortunately, to lose something does not mean that it has gone. It merely means that you do not remember where it is. Its existence does not depend on your ability to identify it or even to place it. It is possible to look on reality without judgment and merely know that it is there. Peace is a natural heritage of spirit. Everyone is free to refuse to accept his inheritance, but he is not free to establish what his inheritance is. The problem everyone must decide is the fundamental question of authorship. All fear comes ultimately, and sometimes by way of various devious routes, from the denial of authorship. The offense is never to God, but only to those who deny him. To deny him his authorship is to deny yourself the reason for your peace, so that you see yourself only in segments. This strange perception is the authority problem. There is no one who does not feel that he is imprisoned in some way. If this is the result of his own free will, he must regard his will as not free, or the circular reasoning in this position would be quite apparent. Free will must lead to freedom. Judgment always imprisons because it separates segments of reality by the unstable scales of desire. Wishes are not facts. To wish is to imply that willing is not sufficient. Yet no one in his right mind believes that what is wished is as real as what is willed. Instead of, quote, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, unquote, say, will ye first the kingdom of heaven? And you have said, I know what I am, and I accept my own inheritance. Any comments?
Just that I get it,
Oh, good.
I think.
Yeah, I think you do too. Yeah. I know what I am, and I accept my own inheritance. We are the children of God. We are pure and innocent. We are holy and eternal. And so accept your inheritance, accept who you are, accept yourself as a child of God, and leave all the ego judgment stuff. Just leave it. Again, when you walk out of the darkness into the light, the darkness just disappears on its own because the light dissipates the darkness. When you walk into spirit and you just leave the ego behind, it disappears. You can forget about it. It wasn't real in the first place. So there's so many people that just keep clinging and clinging and clinging to the ego world, and they're desperate not to die. Dying would be the best thing for them. They get a greater sense of themselves as spiritual beings when they're not trapped in ego bodies.
That
Yeah,
reminds me a little bit of the joke about the older married couple where the older man says, I long for the release that death will bring. But yeah.
yeah.
This is reminding me a little bit of that book, The Four Agreements, by, is it Miguel Ruiz?
I never read that one.
Oh, it's a good one. Short. It's a short, quick read. And one of them is that you should have, it's be impeccable in your words, just very good life, I guess axioms or whatever. But one of them is that you should have no concern what other people think of you. And it's kind of the flip side of this idea that, other people judging you also should have, no concern to you whatsoever. Or what people say, what other people think of me is none of my business.
That's right. You're right. That is the flip side.
And life is much easier that way. I understand what he's talking, what he is talking about when the mention is made of you have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment.
Yes,
Life is so much easier.
it is. Yes. Yes. Well, we have reached the end of chapter 3, section 6. And so next week, we shall move on to section 7. And unless there's any last minute thoughts, let's have a moment of silence.